So, with this being the last class in this series, I just wanted to talk about really where we end up with the practice in terms of what I've been teaching. We end up hopefully in a place where the practice becomes self-contained, where the practice no longer becomes something that you're doing as much as something that's just taking place. It's connecting with the practice in a deeper way, and realizing that all we really are doing is connecting with what's taking place. Last week, we talked about working with presence. We talked about turning our attention towards the aspect of awareness. Sometimes we call it awareness. Sometimes in some contexts we call it mind, and sometimes we call it presence. So it's that aspect of our experience that is not the experience. The aspect of our experience that's not the thought, that's not the feeling, that's not the sensation. It's that aspect of our experience that's just pure knowing. It's a knowing aspect. So over the course of the last several evenings, I talked about the first step is really in the practice of turning our attention inwards towards ourselves and seeing how much of our experience being in the world is our doing, how much of our experience is actually our mental states and our thoughts, even though there's things happening outside ourselves. Instead of putting our attention so much on the external circumstances and situations, we learn to observe ourselves. So for instance, if we're upset with something, instead of being upset with a person, you turn the attention towards yourself and you see that energy within your own being. And you start to work with that. You don't follow the narrative of where that upsetness wants to take you, but rather you look at that aspect of upsetness within yourself. And that goes for all emotions, all experiences. That's kind of what we're doing here, is we're turning that attention inward. And then the other thing I talked about was moving towards the wholesome. So in this practice, we move towards that which helps us grow. We move towards that which is healthy, physically, emotionally, mentally. We avoid situations that we know for one reason or the other are not healthy for us, are not bringing out the best of us. So we constantly are watching. You could use the analogy of food. There's certain foods you eat, and after you eat those foods, you're not going to feel very well at all. And there's other foods you eat, and when you eat them, they give you energy, they make you feel calm. And so it's like that. It's also with the people we hang out with the situations we put ourselves in, with the activities we join in or we don't join in. We're looking towards when we're moving towards those situations and experiences that help move us towards the wholesome. We could also say that help move us towards calm and balance and clarity. So we're doing that. Our attention is inward. We're moving towards the wholesome. We're developing calm and the ability to just observe and not react, or to learn to watch our reactions. So in doing that, we are developing calm and clarity in situations. Once again, not reacting, not buying into the reaction, but watching the reaction. What happens with that is that turns into, it creates a quality of mind that we call clarity. Is the mind is no longer, it's like a pond. The pond is no longer being ruffled. The surface of the pond is no longer being ruffled by the breeze or the wind, or perhaps a stick that's shaking it. So we learn to develop those aspects of calm and clarity within the mind, so we can be with what's taking place in a more full way. And doing these practices sounds simple, but as we all know, it's not. It's difficult. Some things are easy to be let go of, and other things are a lot more of a challenge. But by applying these principles, what we're doing is we're developing roots, right? Like the root of the bamboo. We put the time in. We put the time in. And we develop those deep, strong roots through coming back to that calm, through coming back to that clarity. So that's the path, you know, that's the path. So that's the path to developing this foundation, We develop a ground, sometimes called the ground of being. It's this ground of knowing, of being with the watcher, being with the knower. And we get to that by all of the things I've just described now. We get to that point. And when we get to that point, we begin to become aware of that aspect of mind that is clarity. It's calm, it's energetic, and it's bright and easily focused. You're really with what's in front of you. You're not somewhere else. And for most of us, we have that experience of that clarity in the beginning anyway. It's very fleeting. It comes and it goes. Or there's a sudden sense of that quality of awareness that's not tainted by any of the objects. This is not a great feat, not an impossible feat. It is a deeper seeing of what's already taking place, right? It's a deeper seeing of ourselves. It's a deeper seeing of the mind. That's what it is. But we do all of these things to bring us to this point. And when we start to connect with that clarity, that knowingness, then we see what the path is. And the path is simply supporting all that brings us to that place and letting go of everything that takes us away from that. But it's one step at a time, right? It's one step at a time. But there is a lot that takes us away from it, right? There's a lot that takes us away from it. And the roots of it are very, very deep. So the other thing that we need is we need commitment. We need commitment. Is if you really taste that clarity, if you really taste, let's call it something else. Let's call it an open heart. Let's call it just a sense of feeling balanced. Let's call it just a sense of being calm. However it appears to you, because all of those things are actually the same thing. They're not confusion. But there's a point where we need to make a commitment to it. You really need to be committed. Otherwise, the train of habitual patterns just keeps rolling on. You know, it just keeps rolling on. So we need to do this practice and then to see that there's another way to be, to really understand that that calm, that clarity, that knowingness, that presence, whatever you want to call it, is here. It's within your grasp. But you have to do the work to connect with it, which is what we're doing here. And then when you connect with it, you have to make a commitment. And the commitment is not, you know, you don't have to go to India and become a monk or a nun. But somewhere in your heart, you contemplate and you know that there's a better way to be. That there is a more full way to be. That your life, this life, is an opportunity to wake up to a deeper sense of yourself. And then quietly, within yourself, within your heart, as you move through the day, you watch. And we watch the choices that we make. And we move towards that which brings us back to that connection again and again. There's no other way. We kind of all think that we'll just have this meditation one day and, you know, the sky will break open and everything will be, you know, like, whoa, it's all done. I'm out of here. And who knows, that may happen. But for most of us, is we get that sense, we get that glimpse, we have those moments. And we really allow them in our heart. It's like, wow, there's another way to be. So we develop that. We develop trust in that. We learn. That's why you know, when you read the the teachings of Dzogchen, working with Dzogchen, which is a Tibetan, which is a Tibetan practice on the nature of mind. They just simply say rest in awareness. That's what I'm talking about. But you can't just simply say that to somebody, although the internet is filled with people who are saying that. Filled with Dzogchen teachers and non-dual teachers, and it's like, you just have to do this. Well, I did it, and look at me, you know? Good for you. People should just all go to one of those people and just stand around and clap for a long time. Do I sound a little, do I sound bitter? It bugs me because I think a lot of it's not that sincere. Because for most people, it's a gradated path. And we need to work with it. Because you watch those people and then it's like, what comes up? What's wrong with me? You know, I'm trying just to be, but I can't do it. He can do it. And then I read all the comments and all these people are commenting. They listen to his talks and they're enlightened too. Apparently Jim Carrey's enlightened. Cool. Good for him. I don't know. I'm making this point because it is work, and it is moving along this path, and it is coming to that place of presence, that place of beingness, that place of awareness, coming to it, gaining confidence in it, learning to rest in it, and seeing how we move out of it and how we move into it. But it's practice again and again and again. But the thing about it is, as well, is when we make that commitment, and that commitment is making a choice within ourselves of moving towards that greater clarity, that greater freedom, is when we truly make that commitment. Then I said this in one of my retreats recently, then the universe meets us halfway. We start to get supported. We start to get supported. Is the support from outside of ourselves, or is the support from within our own minds? When we've made that commitment to be truly present, then we've also, what's changed is we're okay with whatever comes up. We start to become more and more okay of what presents itself. And sometimes a really deep suffering comes up and it hangs around for a while. It's not unusual for people with the energy from the practice, with the energy that we create within ourselves from doing all this practice, when it comes up against the block, it puts energy into that block. There's a Tibetan saying, it's better not to start at all, but if you do start, it's better to finish. I should have said that the first class. I know, I tricked you all. But with that awareness, there's a tremendous energy that comes. And when we come up against the block, in acupuncture, there's a familiar thing that happens on the table, and I'll put a needle in somebody. Oh, I do a series of needles to open up flow in the body. And there may be a time where all of a sudden the person gets this really strong pain, and it'll be in a place where there's no needle. It'll be in the middle of their left forearm or somewhere in their spine, and there's no needles anywhere around that part of the body. And they'll say, oh, like my wrist is really hurting now, or my arm's really hurting. And what happens is that energy is moving through the body, and it comes to a block. And when it comes to the block is resistance, right? And as that energy is going up against this resistance, there's a lot of pressure, and sometimes it turns into pain. But typically what happens is, after a period of time, the block opens up and the pain is gone. But we've taken that energy, moved it through the meridian, and it's hit a block. But I could have not moved energy in the meridian, but it was blocked, so I did. So we could choose not to do anything with our lives, but there's blocks, and there's unsatisfactoriness, and there's suffering, and maybe there's also a sense, a knowing of something, possibility of living a life with freedom, but with a much greater freedom and grace. So we bring awareness, we bring energy, and it hits blocks. And those blocks can be a lot of work. But that commitment, that's why, like in Buddhism, we take refuge every morning. We make a commitment to the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, or a commitment to compassion, awareness, wisdom. Because we don't stay connected with that commitment, whatever words you need to use, whatever form it takes for you, if we don't stay connected with it, then it's like, it's really hard to stay on the path. Something else I'll say, but I don't really want to go into it anymore right now, but sometime I will. It's also interesting, if a person has a block on a meridian, sometimes what we do, say if the block is here, or say if they pulled a tendon, and there's a lot of inflammation in the tendon. You don't needle the tendon, you needle above and below on the meridian. Because to go right into the inflamed tendon would be too painful and not always advantageous. So sometimes when we come up against the big block, then sometimes we need to work in the space around it and not be so focused on the block, but be with the space around it. I was thinking about this morning, actually. And I often say to people, well, if there's a difficult emotion that's coming up, find it in the body, find where it is in the body, and put your attention on it. But another way to work with it is to find where it is in the body, but put your attention above it or below it or around it, but not in it. So we're not always just jumping right into the middle of the fire. We don't always have to jump right into the middle of the fire. When they're fighting a forest fire, you know how they go around the edge of the forest and they dig trenches, right? So the fire won't spread beyond maybe the acre, and they wet all the trees around, the burning trees. So sometimes we have to develop the calm and the clarity and the compassion, and not necessarily jump right into the middle of the fire, but work around the edges of it. Yeah. When we are really connected with the knower, with the awareness, with that clarity, then that's where our attention is. And with whatever comes up in the mind, our attention is not, we're not pulled away by it, because our attention is on the clarity, our attention is on the knower. Our attention is on the watcher. We've learned to rest in that. We've learned to be that. We haven't even learned to be it. We see that we are it. So we end with all of the things that we've done so far, and then we've connected with that place of inherent calm and clarity. And we see what takes us away and what brings us back. And we learn to be able to rest in that. But not only do we rest in it, is we see that is actually what we are. And then we make a commitment. Make a commitment to that.